To work on mixture word problems, it's important that you define your variables clearly. So in this particular problem, we've got a solution that's got 15% acid, and we're going to dilute it to 2%. And we're going to dilute it by adding water. So let's let X be the milliliters of pure water. And as you know, pure water has no acid in it, so you want to keep track of the percentages that we're going to add to the solution. Now we know that we start out with 50 milliliters of the 15% acid solution. And we're going to add X milliliters plus 50 milliliters of the first solution to get X plus 50 in the resulting solution. So think about being in a lab and you have beakers full of elements. So you've got your beaker of water and your beaker of hydrochloric acid 15% solution, and you're going to combine them into a new beaker. So I find that a picture helps. So here's my beaker of water. I've got X milliliters and there's 0% acid. And now I'm going to draw my beaker of the original 50 milliliters of 15% hydrochloric acid solution. So I put the percent up here just to keep track of it. And when I'm in the lab, I combine the two and into a new beaker. And so in this beaker, I'm going to have X plus 50 milliliters of solution, and this solution is 2% acid. Now to write the equation, we're going to look at how much acid is in each beaker. And so we're going to use the percent and multiply times the amount of liquid in the beaker. Now remember that when we use percents, we want to change them to decimals to multiply. So the 15% becomes 0.15, and we're going to multiply that times 50. You notice that I have 0 times X for the first beaker. That's how much acid is in the first beaker. 0.15 times 50 in the second beaker. And in my last beaker, I have 0.02, that's 2% as a decimal, times X plus 50. And I've got to put that X plus 50 in parentheses because I need to use distributive property. Okay, so no acid in the first beaker. 7.5 is what I have in acid in the second beaker. And now I'm going to distribute to get my acid in the third beaker. So now after I've distributed the 0.02 by multiplying times X and times 50, I need to isolate X. I need to get X on its own on one side of the equal. So I'm going to move the 1 over, and I can only do that legally by subtracting 1 from both sides. Notice how I lined up the decimal points over here. 7.5 minus 1 is 6.5, and that's going to be equal to 0.02x. And that coefficient of 0.02, we need to move that over as well, but this time we're going to divide so that we get 1x on the right and 325 milliliters on the left. So 325 milliliters, and I wrote out ounces, but that's how much water we need to dilute. Okay, in this particular problem, we're mixing antifreeze, and we've got a 70% antifreeze solution and a 30% antifreeze solution, and we're going to mix the two to make a 45% solution. So we're going to again define our variables, and X is going to be the number of gallons of 70% antifreeze solution that we're going to mix to the 10 gallons of 30% solution. Notice how I write these down, and of course we're mixing the two together, so we're going to have X plus 10 gallons of the resulting solution, which is our 45% antifreeze mixture. Okay, again, we're going to use our little drawing to help us. So here's our X gallons. There's 70% antifreeze in this jug. And we're going to add it to our next jug. And it's got 10 gallons. 30% of that is antifreeze. We're going to mix the two into a bigger jug to create a 45% antifreeze. And there's X plus 10 gallons of that. Now again, we're going to multiply. So we have 0.70x times 0.30 times 10 equals 0.45 times x plus 10, which again needs to be in a parentheses so that we can distribute. Remember, we changed our decimals, our percents to decimals. Okay, so we have 0.70x plus, and then 0.30 times 10, which is 3. And we're distributing the 0.45, so we get 0.45x plus 4.5. Okay, we've got x's on both sides of the equation, so we have to get them on the same side. We're going to move over the 0.45x to the left, so we're going to subtract it from both sides. And I'm lining up my decimals, although, of course, you can use your calculator for this. But I'm going to have to borrow here. And so I get 0.25x, bring down the 3, equals, those 0.45x's cancel, and so we're left with a 4.5. Now we're going to subtract the 3 from both sides to move it over to the right, get the like terms together. So subtract 3, line up the 3 with the decimal, and 0.25x comes down, and then we have here that these 3's cancel, and here we have 1.5. Now we have to get rid of the coefficient of x, the 0.25, so we're going to do that by dividing by 0.25 so that those 0.25's reduce to a 1, so they cancel. So now we have x is equal to, and then 1.5 divided by 0.25 is 6. So turns out that we need 6 gallons of that 70% antifreeze mixture to add to our original